In this video, I want to explore the narrative surrounding job opportunities in geology and geography after completing these degrees. I often hear that employment in these fields is limited compared to other STEM disciplines or even other fields in general. But in my opinion, that's not entirely accurate. In the segments that follow, I'll highlight over 25 organizations and institutions in Jamaica where geoscience graduates can potentially build their careers. I'll also share some of my personal experiences navigating the job market as a new graduate over a decade ago, along with insights from places I've worked since then. Additionally, I'll discuss the key skills and competencies new graduates should focus on to improve their chances of success. So, whether you're currently finishing a degree in the Department of Geography and Geology at the University of the West Indies, Mona, or you graduated a few years ago and are still searching for the right opportunity, this video is for you. So here's a conversation I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. You're at a relative's house, a party, or maybe an event on the UWI Mona campus. And for my non-Jamaican viewers, UWI is the University of the West Indies, the premier tertiary institution in the Caribbean. At some point, the topic of your major comes up. Someone asks what you're studying and you say geology or geography, and then comes the response. So, what are you going to do with that when you're finished? Sometimes people who are not very informed but think they are will go even further and tell you outright you won't find any jobs in Jamaica with that. And often they say this without really understanding what these disciplines actually involve. They reduce geology to just studying rocks, maybe limiting it to a focus on oil and gas. They reduce geography to maps, knowing world capitals, rivers, and a bit of economics. What they don't see are the complexities of the tools we use, the natural systems we study, and the constant interaction between environmental processes and economic systems. And honestly, it can get exhausting. It can feel like you constantly have to explain yourself, what you study, what you do, and what your future may look like. While more traditional or conventional career paths like law, medicine, teaching, or even other STEM fields aren't questioned nearly as much. From what I've observed, this isn't just a Jamaican issue either. Even in parts of the world where there are far more geoscience related opportunities, students and graduates still face similar skepticism. So here's my message to students and those seeking jobs. Don't let those narratives define your path, even when they come from people who sound confident in what they're saying. The reason I'm making this video is because these narratives are still circulating today. And honestly, I want this to reach people who are starting to doubt themselves, those who feel discouraged or even pressured by peers or family members into thinking their degrees have no value. Those who are told that the only option for them is teaching and nothing more. That simply isn't true. As I mentioned before, when I was a student, constantly having to explain the relevance of my degree made me very aware of what opportunities were out there. I ended up doing a deep dive into different organizations, what they do, and how my skills could be used. Back then, I had a list of about 12 to 15 entities. Since then, after working for years and in preparation for this video, that list has grown. Even so, it's still not exhaustive. But here's a solid snapshot of where geology and geography graduates can find opportunities in Jamaica. I have worked with a few of these places, some as an intern just out of UWI. Others, I have been engaged as a consultant later in my career, and there are two which I was employed to permanently, one for 2 years, the other for 8 years. And to this day, I still have colleagues and friends still employed at these institutions, many getting their first degrees in a geoscience discipline. So number one, Mines and Geology Division. I'm sure many may be familiar with this one. Your possible roles may include evaluating development applications for geological soundness, assessing rocks based on their physical and chemical properties to inform stakeholders in the mining and quarrying sector of their potential. You could potentially serve as a mines inspector, ensuring quarries follow established protocols, or be involved in revenue and evaluation, conducting draft surveys on exports like bauxite and alumina. 2. Water Resources Authority. They focus on two main areas, hydrology and hydrogeology. As a hydrologist, you study surface water like rivers, flooding, and drought. As a hydrogeologist, you assess groundwater systems including aquifer recharge, depletion, and wells. There are other roles as well, but these are the core ones. For example, after Hurricane Melissa, WRA professionals helped assess the rise in groundwater levels in parts of Manchester. While many people think only of the NWC when it comes to water in Jamaica, WRA plays a critical role in managing Jamaica's water resources. Number 3, Jamaica Bauxite Institute, and they focus on bauxite resources and management and mining policy. And many geoscience graduates from UWI have built careers here, contributing to the development of Jamaica's bauxite industry. Number 4, National Environment and Planning Agency, NEPA. And geoscience graduates have worked here in areas such as watershed management, spatial planning, and GIS, supporting environmental regulation and sustainable land use. Number 5, Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM. So Jamaica is vulnerable to hurricanes, earthquakes, landslides, tsunamis, and even bushfires, making ODPEM a critical organization. And many geoscience graduates from UWI have worked here, including notable leaders like Franklin McDonald, a geologist who was the founding director, and Dr. Barbara Carby, she's a former director general with a PhD in geochemistry. And many contemporary people I know personally have worked here as well, not in management roles, and some of them have moved on. But anyways, number 6, the National Spatial Data Management Division, or LICJ, and this is the government's GIS hub. And many geoscience graduates have built their careers here working on spatial data management and geospatial projects. Number 7, the Forestry Department. The focus here is on forest conservation, land cover analysis, and ecosystem management, and many graduates apply their GIS skills here to support environmental monitoring and planning. Number 8, National Land Agency, NLA. And the focus here is on land surveying, mapping, and land information systems. And graduates often apply GIS and spatial analysis skills to support land management and planning. Number 9, bauxite companies. So when most people think of geology graduates in Jamaica, this is the first thing that usually comes to mind. But roles specifically in bauxite can be limited, so it's important to think about all the wider areas where your skills can be applied, such as mineral extraction, land rehabilitation, and environmental monitoring. Number 10, the cement company. And here it involves raw material sourcing, quarry management, and geological assessment. This is another area where several of my colleagues have built their careers in the past, so it's viable. Number 11, the Petroleum Corporation of Jamaica, or PCJ, and it is now subsumed into the Ministry of Energy. And the focus here is on energy resources, particularly petroleum exploration and geoscience research. And I know there has been a lot of buzz lately about offshore oil exploration in Jamaica. But exploration in Jamaica is something that has been going on for a long time without the average Jamaican being even aware of it unless they look really closely. Exploration work dates back to the 1950s, and local geologists have always been involved in the process. There have been some key figures like in the past, like Dr. Raymond Wright, and I also maintain connections with more contemporary individuals who are graduates of the department and who have worked there in a geological capacity in the past. And around 2020, PCJ was subsumed into its parent ministry, and I recall seeing positions like junior and senior geologists advertised through the ministry around 2022 to 2023. So regardless of the restructuring, geologists have worked there and continue to do so. Number 12 is the National Works Agency, and the focus is on road, bridges, and other engineering works with applications in engineering, geology, slope stability, and infrastructure planning. I'm quite familiar with this organization. They also have a strong GIS department, well, at least in the past, and other geoscience graduates. They have worked in areas such as technical services and project management. Number 13 is the parish councils. And I know a lot of geoscience graduates who have worked across various parish councils, and they've contributed to things such as sustainable development planning committees and disaster management and mitigation initiatives. Number 14, the Jamaica National Heritage Trust. So this one may raise a few eyebrows, but I included it because of the concept of geoheritage. Places like Port Royal or Judgment Cliff are shaped by geological processes and have been around and have been profoundly impacted by Jamaica's history, and they are a part of Jamaica's national identity. And it's not something that's discussed widely in our local context, as highlighted in research by Dr. Sheree James Williamson, Margaret Archam, and Patricia Green. They focus on things like cultural heritage and so on, and landscape preservation and heritage preservation, and human geography or geographers can apply their skills in these contexts. 15 now is private environmental firms, and there are many of them in Jamaica, and they focus on environmental consulting, impact assessment, and monitoring. These are many, and all development applications usually they require a thing called an environmental impact assessment, or an EIA, which is a comprehensive report involving multiple specialists including ecologists, planners, hydrologists, and geologists. Every EIA includes a geology component, and I have seen where it's sometimes not done by geologists, which can lead to weaker work. However, this doesn't happen in most cases, and majority of them are handled properly. Overall, this is a key area where geoscience graduates can find opportunities. Number 16, any organization with a GIS unit. Spatial analysis, data visualization, all of that stuff is everywhere. GIS categories, there are many, and some entities have strong GIS departments with 10 people, others have like 2 or 3 people. And I've seen GIS jobs advertised for places like the Electoral Office of Jamaica, NHT, and even banks. It's far and wide, and it will make this list even longer. Mineral exploration companies, and these companies focus on geological surveys, geophysics, and resource exploration. Over the years, many entities have conducted metallic mineral exploration in Jamaica. As of the time of this video, 2 notable companies are C3 Metals and Geophysics Jamaica Limited. Both have employed locally trained graduates, and while many of the employees may move on to other opportunities over time, these companies continue to provide a career path into the sector. Number 18, petroleum exploration companies. So before the recent attention on United Oil and Gas, there was Tullow Oil operating in Jamaica, and both companies have employed locally trained geologists. Number 19, engineering firms. I've had a few colleagues who have worked in some of these firms alongside the engineers, so engineering firms can use your skills as well. Number 20, UE based research units. I wanted to include these as well. Several graduates have worked for years at the Mona Geoinformatics Institute, for example, contributing to research and projects. Regarding the earthquake unit, I know graduates who have completed their internships there over time, gaining valuable hands-on experience in seismic monitoring and research. And it's a very long list. Number 21 is UN affiliated organizations. So let me share a story about this one with you. There was a colleague of mine. She began her career teaching geography at the high school level. After about 5 years, she managed to secure employment in the government as a geologist, where she worked for several more years before joining UNESCO. Other colleagues of mine have participated in at-sea training with the International Seabed Authority, and I have seen geological roles advertised on the ISA's website as well in the past. Many of these positions aren't entry level. They usually require years of experience, but they illustrate the kinds of career paths that are possible in international or UN affiliated organizations. And when considering a list like this, you really have to ask, why is the relevance of geology and geography still questioned in our local context? And to those who are watching who are already in industry, what did I leave out? Because I know there's even more, a lot more. Now, I want to stick a pin here and be real with students and graduates. These organizations are not always hiring at the exact moment you are ready to apply. That's just the reality of it. But that doesn't mean you should stop trying. Some people get through immediately, others take time. I know people who have worked in call centers for years, or even for a year or two, just before breaking into a field that uses their geoscience degrees. Others have spent time teaching at the secondary level before transitioning. In my case, I started with a number of short-term contracts, 3 to 4 months at a time. Right after UE, I did some short stints across different agencies collecting data. I also worked with a local sustainable development entity through a graduate work experience program for a short while. In between those roles, when I was not actively working, I was constantly applying to jobs, building my skills, and taking free online courses to boost the skills I already had. Eventually, I landed a permanent position as a laboratory technician, testing soil, concrete, and aggregate for their engineering applications before moving on to a geological role in the mining and quarrying sector, where I worked for 8 years before getting to where I am today. The point is this: every journey looks different. Some people may move quickly, others take time. That's not unique to geology and geography either. It's the reality of every field. Now, this is something I often tell students who are just leaving university and are asking me for advice. The jobs in these institutions are not always going to have the title geologist or geographer. Yes, every now and then you might scroll through the career section of the Sunday Gleaner or a job site and see a posting that says geologist. I've seen a few in recent years. Here are some on screen from around 2021 to 2024. And if you ever come across one, by all means apply. But these opportunities, they don't come up every day. What I encourage instead is this: focus on the skills you've developed. One of the most important and increasingly valuable skill sets is Geographic Information Systems, or GIS, and Remote Sensing, RS. Mastering these can open doors across multiple industries. While you may not frequently see a job title that says geologist, you will regularly see roles such as GIS technician, GIS analyst, GIS coordinator, or even GIS programmer. Let me share a quick story. A few months after leaving UA, I got an interview at a local bank, not for a financial role, but for a GIS analyst position. I didn't get the job. Someone who graduated a year ahead of me did. But I wasn't discouraged. If anything, I felt enlightened. It made me ask, why would a bank need a GIS analyst? Think about it. Banks deal with things like mortgages and property insurance. They need to assess risks spatially. Is a property located in a flood prone area? Is it on a slope? You know, is it vulnerable to landslides? GIS allows them to analyze these risks and make informed decisions like setting insurance premiums. There's also business geography. Location matters. Advertising, for example, is not random. Billboards and campaigns are placed based on data. Population, demographics, traffic patterns, proximity to competitors. A bank offering car loans or pensions, they need to know what audience they're targeting. Is the place full of young professionals, or are we dealing with retirees? These are the questions they need answers. And beyond economics, remote sensing plays a role in environmental monitoring. After Hurricane Melissa impacted Jamaica, I was so encouraged to see recent graduates mapping changes in vegetation using tools like NDVI. That's real applied geoscience. Now, one more thing about GIS. Make sure you are familiar with multiple platforms. ArcGIS Pro is widely used, but also learn QGIS and Google Earth Engine. It also helps to learn a bit of coding. I'm not saying you need to become a computer programmer, but having exposure, at least a little bit, especially to Python, can go a long way. It helps you automate tasks, understand workflows, and to communicate better with software developers if you have them on your team. Even today, there are online communities where people share useful, Python scripts and so on that you can adopt. Also, start paying attention to emerging areas like Geo AI, AI-assisted coding tools. These are becoming more integrated into geospatial workflows, and being familiar with them gives you an edge. Now, while I've spent a lot of time on GIS and remote sensing because they've been central to my own career, there are other important skills to consider. Water resources management, for example, especially for those who studied hydrogeology and may work in agencies like WRA and NEPA. There's disaster management, which is critical for roles in hazard mitigation, planning, and emergency response. And of course, geological mapping and interpretation, essential for work in agencies like the Mines and Geology Division or in mineral exploration. These are just a few examples, but the key takeaway is this: your degree is not limiting. You just need to understand how to translate your skills into real world applications. And before I move on, there's one more important point I want to highlight. As a recent graduate, it's essential to have a working understanding of Jamaica's laws and acts that govern different fields. Now, I'm not saying you need to memorize every section of every act verbatim. What I am saying is that you should understand the point of these laws and how they shape the way different organizations operate, especially if you're aiming to work with government agencies, NGOs, or international bodies. For example, there's the NRCA Act, which falls under the purview of NEPA, but is really a foundational piece of environmental legislation. No matter where you end up, it's something you should at least be familiar with. I remember during my master's program, one of my lecturers, attorney at law, Lalita Davis Mattis, referred to it as umbrella legislation, and that always stuck with me. If you're considering a path with the Mines and Geology Division, then you should also be aware of legislation like the Mining Act, the Quarry Control Act, the Mineral Vesting Act, and the broader mineral policy. If your interests lean toward water resources, say working with the Water Resources Authority or some private water entity, then the Water Resources Act becomes especially relevant. If your sights are set on ODPEM, become au fait with the Disaster Risk Management Act. And beyond the local framework, it's important to understand the global context as well. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, play a major role in shaping environment and development priorities worldwide. Similarly, for organizations like the International Seabed Authority, agreements such as the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea are key. Now, I'm not telling you to become a policy analyst or a lawyer. What I am encouraging is basic knowledge and awareness and understanding of the bigger picture, Because at the end of the day, science doesn't operate in a vacuum. Science informs policy, and policy in turn shapes how science is applied. Whether you're assessing slope stability or running geostatistical analysis in some GIS software, or evaluating flood risk, or determining whether a mineral resource is economically viable, there is always a policy framework guiding those decisions. Understanding that connection will make you a stronger, more effective geoscience professional. Alright, this is where it gets even more real. For most people, the job hunt is not going to be easy. It requires persistence, consistency, strategy, and a never give up attitude. If things aren't going the way you envisioned, you have to keep pushing toward where you actually want to be, even if it means taking a detour for a little while. Life is almost never a linear experience. Let me share a personal experience with you. During some of my periods of unemployment, I spent a lot of time researching organizations, what they do, how they operate, and where I could fit in. I spent, a lot of time sending out applications by email. But I also remember one day in particular very, very clearly. I had my JanSport backpack, 6 envelopes, and a bottle of water. I walked all over Kingston dropping off applications. Each envelope had a tailored cover letter and resume, and every letter I included one line. I'm interested in any position that suits my qualifications. I did hear back from a few places, but most of them responded with something to the effect of, "We are sorry, we don't have any positions available at this time." But I must say, one of the first internships I received just out of you was obtained through that approach. Recently, I shared this experience with one of my non-Jamaican geoscience colleagues and said to her, I think I was a bit lucky to have worked in different capacities in Jamaica where I actually used my degree, because so many people have had such a hard time finding jobs and never end up in a capacity where they use their degree at all. She smiled and said, "It wasn't luck. It wasn't luck at all. You worked extremely hard to get into those different roles. Sounds to me that you earned all of them." I never really looked at it that way before, but she's right in a sense. That's part of the process. Sometimes you have to follow up. Sometimes you have to call. Sometimes you have to go from door to door. Sometimes you have to put yourself out there more than once. Another thing I strongly recommend, especially for current students, is to start early. Look for summer opportunities from your first year. Think about it. If you spend 2 or 3 summers working with organizations like NEPA, ODPEM, or Mines and Geology Division, or even working in field exploration, you not just gain experience, you build connections, and those connections matter. You have to be proactive. You also have to be prepared and learn to accept rejection. Rejection stings, I know it does, but it's part of the journey. You might start out in a place you didn't originally plan for, like, teaching or working in a call center or doing something completely unrelated. It's disappointing, even heartbreaking, but it's okay. What matters is that you don't stop looking and you don't lose sight of your goal on your detour. Because the truth is, this is the story for many graduates, not just in geology and geography, but check with anybody in any discipline, across all disciplines, you know? The difference is the ones who eventually break through are the ones who keep going. They just keep going. Well, there you have it. I hope you found this deep dive into careers in geology and geography in Jamaica both insightful and practical. And for the students watching, I especially hope this gave you a bit more encouragement and clarity about what's possible. The world is your oyster, so don't give up. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.